Welcome, Children of the Night, back to the Infernal Archive. We bring to you again a contemporaneous, I don't think that's a word, a contemporary review. We're gonna go see Leigh Whannell's Wolfman. It's a reboot by Blumhouse Universal. It is like an official Universal monster picture. They're bringing the Wolfman back. He brought the Invisible Man back in grand fashion, and now he's gonna see if he can do the same with Wolfman. Just gonna read some of the stars read the little Wikipedia blurb for you. Wolfman is a 2025 American horror film directed by Leigh Whannell from a screenplay he co-wrote with Corbett Tuck, a reboot of the Wolfman from 1941. The film stars Christopher Abbott, Julia Garner, who is from Ozarks, if you've ever seen that show, and Sam Yeager. The plot follows a family man seeking to protect his wife and daughter from a werewolf, only to become infected and slowly transform into the creature. Jason Blum produces alongside his Blumhouse production banner. Andrew, do you know anything about this film?
Very little, other than I'm a big fan of whoever. I think of her as Ruth from Ozark. I think she's an incredible actress.
Yes.
Excited to see her in something totally different from Ozark.
Not Ozark?
Yeah.
Yeah, she seems like she has the potential to be like a big time star or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the trailer for this movie. Don't really know what to expect. I love fucking the Invisible Man.
Mm-hmm.
I love fucking the Invisible Man.
You
love
would.
the fucking Invisible. I love the Invisible Man.
This is a course on the importance of commas and grammar.
Where that is. He also did Upgrade, which I know you've seen Upgrade as well, right?
I think so. Yeah. Upgrade was great. I like that.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal action movie. So anyways, Leigh Whannell, he's like a 10 out of 10 filmmaker. We're going to go check out the Wolfman, or just Wolfman. It's not the Wolfman. We're going to go check out Wolfman, and then we'll give you our thoughts when we're back.
It is time to keep your appointment with the Wicker Man.
And Children of the Night, we're back. We just got back from seeing Wolfman from this year, contemporary review, directed by Leigh Whannell. Andrew, what'd you think?
Yeah, I think this is probably the first one that we really probably disagree on. I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, number one, not that I don't appreciate the original Universal Monsters movies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the intense reverence that maybe a lot of other people do. So when I say I love this movie, not love's a bit maybe I really like this movie. It's more in the context of on its own and not comparing it against past
What's come before?
Yeah. So in that sense, I thought it was really effective. I guess the number one thing I'll say, what I thought it did really effectively was make a commentary or be a metaphor for parenting, past trauma being passed down to generations.
Mm-hmm.
It did that pretty effectively, and then also told an interesting narrative, I felt. And then, yeah, I mean, cinematography was, like, everything was good. Like, nothing overly stood out in a way where I'm like, I really need to call that out, but I just thought it worked cohesively as a unit.
I really liked they did a thing where they showed you, there's a part of the film, which I actually thought was very interesting, where they so a guy like most werewolf movies, a guy gets infected with the lycanthropy disease and then he slowly transforms or whatever. But as he slowly transforms, one thing they establish early on is that he believes he's communicating with his family, but he's not. He can't. They can't understand what he's saying, and he can't understand what they're saying. And then as time goes on, his vision becomes more crazy, and he sees the world in this like very animalistic. If you've ever played The Witcher 3 and you go into like Witcher sense and you can see like footprints and smells and stuff, that's how he sees the world. Like sounds are really heightened. Like organisms don't look like people. They look like a deer with shiny eyes and like prey, basically. Everything looks kind of like prey, whatever. And I thought that was really neat how they did that. It has like a pinkish blue tone to the whole world too, which is an interesting color palette they went for. It almost reminded me of like the shadow vision in the Lord of the Rings, like when Frodo goes
similar,
kind of like that.
I see you.
And there was an effective transition cinematography wise into that, where it would rather than doing like a hard cut, it was like it would go around behind their head, and then as it goes around behind the head, the vision shifted back into the Witcher sense, into that world, or then when it goes back around the mom's head, it would shift back to like what's actually happening. So that was very immersive, I felt, and like it worked well for the story.
Really quick way to communicate it. That it was like, oh yeah, I get what you're going for here.
I also thought the opening was really effective with that. Like, I feel like that text at the beginning thing, to establish, can either be really effective. Like Us, one of the most effective openings to a horror movie ever. This one, like, not quite as effective as Us, but like it sets the tone right away.
It's great. It gives, because the way it's written, it's almost documentary style, where it's like this one hiker got lost on this date. It's like the Blair Witch Project almost, where it's like immediately you're like, this feels a little more real just because you're establishing the world in this way. And it is a really brilliant way to establish a film. What was the other thing? And you're right, like the whole opening of that movie actually, because they show like our protagonist, they show him as a young boy in the beginning, and you kind of get his backstory. And the opening I thought was really, really good at being like intriguing and giving you enough pieces that it's like it feels like a werewolf movie, but it's also like there's a little bit new here. Like it's not like your traditional werewolf movie necessarily. The other, with the cinematography, just to bring up one more thing, one shot, I think they did it twice. They did it once very overtly, and it was very cool. There's a shot where they're trying to establish that he's obviously isolated from the world, like it's right when he's initially infected. Yeah. And he's kind of like laying down against a wall or something, and his wife's trying to communicate with him, and his daughter's looking at him, and she's worried.
That was so cool.
And they have the whole house lit up, and then you see in the background like light in the porch goes off, and it's in the background. Then the kitchen light goes off. Bah, bah, all these lights in the house are going off until it's just him spotlighted by himself, and like the wife and the daughter. Yeah, he is totally isolated.
And then he passes out. Yes. It's like right before he passes out. Yeah.
And that was like a really well done shot. I kind of wish they would have done that maybe once or twice more. There's one other instance where it kind of went for it, but not quite. But it was a great shot. I'll say there's one thing that I thought was not done particularly well as far as the cinematography goes. It felt like the first take almost. Like I got what they were going for, but they didn't nail the shot, and they just used what they had. That's what the feeling I had was. So when he's becoming infected and he's transforming into the wolf, he's very like he's sickly, like he's stumbling all over the place, he's dazed, he doesn't know where he is. And so what they did is they had a camera rig. There was a really cool camera rig where it could follow his body movements as he's swaying back and forth and whatever. And you've seen this in other movies. That's not the first movie to do it. But the problem was like to do that well, in my mind, you kind of need to be right on his movements. Like the camera needs to be right in line with his movements. And the problem is the camera was a little bit slow or a little bit fast, or sometimes it was right on his movements. It's like I almost could have excused either or, like if it had been a little too slow and a little bit too fast all the time, or if it had been right on. But the problem was it felt like it was trying to do both, and it did neither right effectively. So I was like, I get what you're going for, but it's not like I'm too. You're making me aware of the camera, and you shouldn't be making me aware of the camera. And I think that's the only thing I can think of cinematography wise that I thought was a little. Like I said, it felt to me like this was the first take or the second take. Or
I didn't particularly notice that enough to like have it. To me, I just kind of maybe wrote it off as just disorientation going into that. Like he's all fucked up from the.
It's definitely what they were going for. Yeah.
It didn't like take me out of it or whatever. Totally. No, I'm trying to think the other thing that I wanted to say that was I like the mirroring they did with the beginning and the end in terms of both like the story beats and the actual shots that they kind of mirrored, kind of really tied into that whole like generational trauma, whatever, passing down parenting habits thing really
literally
well.
I become my father. That's
and just like that whole, we see the beginning where they encounter what we think might be the Wolfman at the beginning, and then at the end when they're walking out of the forest, and that you see the valley and like everything just like that, just put a nice bookend on it for me. I thought the location they chose was really like, it was an effective choice for location in terms of feeling isolated and creepy and like dark. We compare the Babadook on the show a lot, but like it gave me the vibes of that in that it's like more so trying to make a point about this subject rather than be a really effective werewolf movie. And so I can understand why, if you wanted a really effective werewolf movie and that's what you were going in to see, was like a standard Universal Monsters werewolf movie, and you got this movie, why you'd be like, like disappointed. But I thought, divorced from that, it worked well.
Yeah, I'd never say it's a bad movie. I guess, like, with these, I am a huge fan of these Universal monsters. Like, I love vampires and I love werewolves and Frankenstein and Creature from the Black Lagoon and all that jazz. And I was thinking about why these properties to me carry like a premium sort of feel. It's like it's not just a zombie movie. It's not just a whatever. It's like it's a cut above. It's almost like how I feel about the 28 Days franchise, where it's like these are zombies elevated, to use a cooking term, and Universal is monsters but elevated to me.
I'm not just like the rest of you. I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm better. I am better.
Or at least they try to be, and that's kind of the way I perceive them. And so, like, a brilliant example by Leigh Whannell. The thing is, like, they fucked it up so many times. Universal has done some really poor monster movies in the last 50 years or so.
Invisible Man, though, was like incredible.
Was such to me, it was like the perfect, like, you are not just riding on your laurels. You're not just remaking the original Invisible Man, which is a great movie in its own right. Actually, like, Hollow Man's not a Universal movie, but Hollow Man to me is also a very good example of like a reimagining an Invisible Man trope. But the Leigh Whannell film in particular was just like, you're bringing it into the 21st century, you're giving it this new angle, which is domestic abuse and toxicity or whatever. And it's just like, you cracked it. You have now reinvented the Invisible Man for the 21st century, and that is, you did it so brilliantly, and it was still scary, and it had these hugely impactful scenes. Like, the Invisible Man to me was just such a great film that came out in the last 10 years. Yeah, and so I was expecting a similar level of like, oh my goodness, you delivered in every level. And I'll say with the Wolfman, I agree with everything you said, where it's like I think the angle he chose, which was that generational trauma angle, was the angle to go for. I think that's a really brilliant way, because like inevitably a werewolf has to get the infection from another werewolf. So like, why not use that necessity of the story and then try to like bring some more depth onto that? Yeah. So I think that was absolutely the angle. My issue with the Wolfman largely, where I thought the Invisible Man was incredibly effective, was the Invisible Man married brilliant visuals, which was like the way they presented the Invisible Man was frightening. It was like the way they shot it when she gets attacked, all this stuff. It was, and even the suit, the Invisible Man suit. There's something so uncanny and eerie about it that's like, I don't like looking at this thing. It gives you that, what do they call it? The fear of holes in.
Trypophobia?
Yeah, trypophobia. It gives you that sort of vibe, and it's like, ooh, what a great fear to play off of. Whereas this movie, and the thing is, this is, I've noticed this trend with werewolf movies in general, and I'm starting to get really fucking sick of it. There's such a rich history in the history of film with practically done werewolf transformations, and not just practically done. Sorry, I should just say werewolf transformations. And so that, like, if you look even back to I think it was 1941 that the first Wolfman came out, or somewhere around there. And what they did is they basically did like 3 or 4 stages of makeup on Lon Chaney Jr., I think that's his name. And so they had like no makeup, they had like a middle stage, and they had the full makeup. And what they did is they crossfaded it to give it that appearance of transforming to the Wolfman. And then obviously, if you've seen American Werewolf in London, it's as good as practical transformation can get. They did all this crazy stuff with rubber and stretching, and
that was Rick Baker, the American Werewolf in London, or where does Rick Baker come into the,
like, the makeup artist? I'm not sure, but you might be correct. Yeah,
that's the one that I know of as like the
peak, or like
that's the one where it's like, whoa, things changed here.
Off the top, I'm a little groggy, so like off the top of my head I can't, but you're probably correct. Yes, American Werewolf in London, anyways, is like the peak of that transformation. Even if you've seen the 2004 film that I love, Van Helsing, it's CGI, but the way that they did the transformation was so unique, where it's like a man literally tearing his skin off, and the wolf is like underneath his skin, and the same thing when he turns back into the man, the wolf tears his skin off, and it was such an original take on it. And it seems like there's a tendency with filmmakers where it's like they want to show off the humanity with the wolf. They don't want to fully embrace the visuals of the wolf, so they will, because
the wolf thing isn't scary.
Well, I think it can. That's the thing. I think it can be, because I think that American Werewolf in London did a pretty good job back in the 80s. Like, obviously it's aged because it's practical, but the thing is, like, that's what I want to see. I want to see a Wolfman we've had this conversation before where we talk about practical effects and why practical effects were done in the ways they were done when they were done, and it was like it wasn't because like they necessarily wanted to do it that way.
It's not like they had the CG and they chose the practical because this is better. It's necessity.
They had to do it that way, and then they did the best fucking job that they could at the time doing it. And it's like American Werewolf in London is a great example. The Thing is also a great example from the 80s, where it's like they took that medium to the limit of practical effects, and it was like and they made a Wolfman that was so original and so contorted and so like but looked like a wolf or whatever. And I'm not saying necessarily like that's like my instinct would be to do that. But I would have loved to. The thing is, I've seen the Man Wolf many times. I've seen it so many times. I don't think you're gonna do a better job of it because it's been done to me to perfection, or like not to perfection necessarily. Not saying that there isn't a take somebody could do that would surprise me, but I've seen it so many times now. I'd like to maybe see somebody like
lean more into the wolf
thing. Try to make it scary. Like the thing is, wolves can be scary if you've ever been face to face with like an angry dog or whatever. I know there is fear to be on a tap there. You just need to unlock that.
But like, what are you gonna do? This is where I cut. Like, what's gonna be different about a werewolf that you're not just gonna get with an angry dog? Like, what is the? To me, it's like the human thing is what makes it the unsettling supernatural force. And the second you take the human weird like fucked up kind of humanoid element out of it, it's just a dog or a wolf. Like that's scary, but it's scary because it's a vicious creature. Like why is it like let's just have it be a dog?
He's like my I would just say like skirt the line more. Like don't the problem is I don't want to feel like the filmmakers resting on their laurels and doing the easy thing, and this movie feels like the easy way out, where it's like it if you've ever seen The Amazing Spider-Man, it's a good example too of like leaning too heavily into the human side of things with like the lizard or whatever, where it's like it's not visually interesting right now. And not only is it not visually interesting, which is whatever, it's not scary, and you're not and it feels like you're not even trying to be scary. And I've had this problem with a few movies we've seen recently where I'm like, if I'm sitting in your movie and I feel like you haven't even made an attempt to be scary with your monster, you're really gonna struggle to get me to want to, or like I want to be scared in a horror movie. I've said this many times, and I'm not saying it's the easiest task, but I want to see that you've made a real attempt. And there was this thing they did at the beginning, and I've said this before. American Werewolf in London, the first 10 minutes to me is one of the most brilliant horror pieces of cinema ever. It's so fucking scary and chilling, and a big part of that is the sound design, like this howl they came up with. And in this film, there was a howl that they used at the beginning of the movie that I'm like, oh, I like that. I hope they build on that because it is unique and there's something to it. And they just never really did anything with it. There was like a moment when the main character does the howl, but it was like almost the sound design. It was so loud, and I love loud, don't get me wrong, but something about the mixing just wasn't there where I'm like, it just sounds like noise. It doesn't sound like a unique, chilling howl. And the best way I could describe it to, if you want an idea of what I'm talking about or what I'm desiring, is if you just go online on YouTube and you type in American Werewolf in London werewolf howl, like I want that sound, but just reimagined for today and like their own take on it, but something that's you hear it and you're like, I want to be out of this fucking forest. Absolutely not, or whatever. And that was another thing that I really thought could have been something that they honestly, had that movie had a howl, like a crazy creepy sound, it could have maybe done or made up for the visuals for me. Like I said, to try to draw it all back, I don't not like this movie. I think it's fine. I think it's a great addition to the werewolf pantheon of films. I don't think it's outdone any of the great ones, though. I don't think it's like a step above any of them. Leigh Whannell, unluckily, like I think his first two movies were basically 10 out of 10s to me. Or 9 out of 10s, like very high, and then this film wouldn't. This would be more of like a 7 out of 10 for me type.
Yeah, I agree. It's not quite as good as Invisible Man. I quite enjoyed it. Again, I don't have the same reverence that you do for the, like other werewolf stuff. Like werewolves have never been like
your fave.
No, not really. I never found anything all that terrifying about them. I agree. Like he wasn't going for scary with the werewolf. It was more like really messed up. Like when he's chewing on his own cut.
Yeah, that
in
was
the corner.
that was a great scene. Yeah,
gross and like really unsettling. And then when they're in the barn and that whole thing and like caught in the trap and that thing. Oh man, I thought that was effective too. But yeah, it wasn't going for scary.
No.
Which if that's what you're wanting and expecting, you're definitely gonna be let down.
Yeah, it's just I would have liked to have seen what he did with the Invisible Man. I would have liked to have seen him do with Wolfman and
to be fair, the bar with the Invisible Man I think was set a lot lower in terms of like the Invisible Man property versus werewolf property. Like I think people love werewolves a lot more than like Invisible Man was fine, but like who's like loves the Invisible Man? I don't really hear people talking about it's not, but you know what I mean? It's not like it's like Iron Man when it's like Iron Man was never like an A-list
general populace. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
He was never like an A-list
but I'll say
superhero. But
that being said, I still do think The Invisible Man was an exceptional film. Even that being said, like I still think the one is clearly the like the exceptional out of the two.
No, I agree.
I think I'll say this one last really positive thing: the sound mixing, for the most part, like I said, the howl I wasn't a big fan of, but everything else, the music and the sound mixing was really fucking good. We saw it in Laser Ultra at Landmark, which is like the equivalent of AVX or IMAX or whatever. Definitely recommend seeing it in that setting. It's way better hearing the forest around you and creepy whatever. That was really great. This isn't the modern reinvention of the Wolfman that I wanted to see that made it like relevant for the new generation. I still think that movie's out there somewhere. That's good though. There are other filmmakers that maybe it's like it hasn't been done, so that means that somebody else could come up and maybe do it. Same with Dracula. I don't think that that modern perfect Dracula film has come out yet. So these Universal and the Creature from the Black Lagoon hasn't even really been attempted. But yeah,
that's a tough one, I think.
Really tough, but I think totally doable, and I want to see somebody do it. But yeah, I think The Invisible Man, you're not going to do a lot better than Leigh Whannell's Invisible Man. I don't see how you could. But yeah, all in all, I think it's a worthwhile time at the theater. It's not everything I wished it would have been, but it's not a bad movie by any means.
Yeah, I would say if you're even a little bit on the fence, go see it. I had a great time. I enjoyed it. To be fair, of the group of people who went to go see it, I was the only one who was like, I like that. Everyone else was like, kind of waffling. I quite enjoyed it. So
thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Infernal Archive, and we'll catch you next time.